Hey everybody, it's Quantum here, and it is Sunday morning, April the 13th in North America. We had a couple of tournaments happen over this weekend and throughout the week since the Hierom ban, and I want to take a look at a couple. They're all pretty small, so take this with a grain of salt. But, there were some pretty significant competitive events. So I want to take a look at this 30-player 1K in Glendale, Arizona. And what do you know? Amethyst Steel ends up taking it. We have an aggro Sapphire Steel, and didn't we kind of call this that we're going to transition to a steel meta? Steel all over the top 8 of this tournament. Again, it's still an isolated event, right? Only 30 players, probably fairly local. Not as much Emerald as you're seeing online. And there could be a number of reasons for that, but one discard making it into the top 4, and a Chernabog deck, which is definitely around in the meta, making the top 8. Also pretty cool to see a Mufasa making top 8 as well. So this looks like it's the full results, first place, second, third, fourth, and then the remainder of the top 8. So let's go ahead and take a look at these lists, starting off with the winning Amethyst Steel list. Again, if you watched my recent Amethyst video, I kind of explained my thoughts on why I think Amethyst Steel kind of goes in a more mid-range direction, and I'm happy to see a mid-range Amethyst Steel list take this tournament down. Now this list is still fairly different from mine. They're running the Tinkerbell shift line, which is admirable. Again, not having to worry about that ruby removal gives you a lot of extra pressure and a lot of justification to run this package, because your Tinkerbell 3-drop 1/3 quest for 2 is going to be relatively safe. And it is a very powerful card, similar to what Minnie Mouse was in set 2. And then you have the ability to shift it onto this shift this Tinkerbell onto the big Tinkerbell Giant Fairy from the first chapter, which is still a monstrous card. Again, especially in an era where you don't have to worry about your board getting wiped by coils and big Sisus or Be Prepareds. This Tinkerbell comes down and is a good check to the what we think I would say is going to be the metagame moving forward, which is a more aggro and mid-range kind of metagame, which again this tournament did reflect. Again, the 1-drop package is pretty standard. These 12 1-drops, no library. This person is opting for a much more aggressive stance in terms of their mid-range package, which is fair. The library, is technically tempo loss, trading it out for card advantage because you're paying ink to obviously play library. Yes, it gains you lore, but then you have to move stuff to it, so it's always an ink loss in order to set that up. And this list is just kind of all gas, right? And that's fairly apparent by the inclusion of 4 docks. So basically, instead of libraries and playing a little bit slower, you're going kind of all in on the dock list. So that would be the difference from my list if you watch my breakdown. And it's definitely obviously it works very well. And yeah, without a doubt, it's you can choose either or. The dock list, if you're very adept at using dock, he's a great option. There's a reason why he's kind of been being bought out. Just another really really effective draw engine. It's hard to include Snake in a list like this, though. So you can see here there is no Snake. The Smee, I think, just in every iteration, like just beats out every other 2-drop. Like I think if you're building any kind of steel list, and again this could change over the course of different sets and metas, but I think Smee is always going to come in as like, yeah, I'm putting 4 Smees in my steel deck, for the most part, right? You even saw like control lists like Emerald Amethyst go with the Emerald Steel. I mean, go with the Mr. Smee because they just need that questing power. Like the card is just so good. 2 cost 3/3 quest for 2, absolutely overtuned, overstated card. But yeah, very powerful. I talked about Calhoun and it's like rise to power in this metagame. And yeah, 4 copies in here because it does so much now into the meta. It's really powerful. 4 crabs, 4 foxes, 4 peats, pretty standard there. And then the Tinkerbell package, 4 genies. So again, opting for the genies over the rabbits just adds more aggressive questing pressure. This list, I will say, does solve the lack of questing power from previous Amethyst Steel lists. You can notice here, like, there's no Cobra, for example, which is one of the most powerful cards out of Arcasia's Island. And this is, again, what we talked about in our Hierom reaction video, right? Where we said we're basically regressing in metagames. We're going back to, like, what the metagame was before. And you're seeing that, right? You're seeing virtually no new cards be played in this list that ended up winning. No cards from Arcasia's Island. But, Tinkerbell, Strength of a Raging Fire, no Friends either, right? We talked about why Friends being cut from this list makes sense. I mean, when you're on the docks, you, again, don't necessarily need Friends either. But yeah, it's a very interesting list. I do think it is very strong. I think this Tinkerbell shift line is pretty good, especially if you're in an aggro-oriented meta, which you can see why they ended up probably beating out this aggro deck here, which is an interesting adaptation for Sapphire Steel. I experimented a little bit with this kind of list in the last format, but it just wasn't good in my opinion. Now that we're not under the suppression of the Ruby strength removal, mainly the big Sisu, the Cogsworth becomes a lot better. This is a card I didn't really talk about, but this is a card you should definitely be looking at if Ruby Amethyst isn't expected to be popular in your area or at competitive tournaments, because like nothing checks this card now, right? Like it was Big Sisu and Be Prepared. Those are the only cards that check Cogsworth basically. Like yeah, technically Tremaines and Be King Undisputed could check it, but like the odds that those are played and or are played in a way that they can check the Cogsworth, pretty much nil. Pluto, right? I think there was one of my lists I showed Pluto in. Was it my Amber Steel? I forget which list I played Pluto, but I was like, yeah, this card also gets better. Less Ruby means you can afford for this Pluto to be a 1/5 and it not just get decimated by Big Sisu, right? So, you know, these kind of lists are coming back. Beast Tragic Hero, again, I think is still kind of vulnerable, especially if we're in a steel meta. But you know, pair it with the Cogsworth, it gets resist. It's a 7/5 if it does get hit, and if it doesn't get hit, it's just an insane draw engine, right? So it still does a lot. Yeah, 4 docks, 4 happy, 4 mine. This is your very effective way of dealing with Diablos as well as other things. 4 strength as well and 4 storm. Notice again, no bell, right? And we talked about this in our Amethyst Sapphire list where I said cutting the bells, cutting the popsicles. It's just too much of a liability to see all of those pieces when you're only playing 4 copies of each in the deck and you have to see them at the same time. It's like why bother? Interesting to see 2 Judy Hops, obviously for opposing decks because there is no items in this list. But just as a 2 quester for 3 is not bad. You know, you got Lawrence as well. And then 3 of the Baymax. I've been a huge fan of this card. And in a steel-oriented meta, you know, this is actually a good point to make because I never really expressed this. But, like, obviously this card would be absolutely terrible in a Ruby-based meta, right? Because it gets brawled, it gets big Sisu'd, small Sisu'd with strength removal or strength reduction. But in a steel meta, it's the opposite, right? The low strength doesn't even matter. The ability is very good. The questing power is very good. It's inkable. It's efficient. And the 6 willpower is what actually matters in a steel-oriented meta. The easiest way to think about it, right, is steel-oriented metas, willpower matters. Ruby-oriented metas, strength matters. Well, at least insofar as, you know, as far as Ruby-oriented metas go, how much of the, I guess you can also say, like, the pairing with the strength reduction, which is basically Ruby Sapphire, right? Like, if there's just a lot of Ruby in the meta, right? Like brawls are only good for doing for 2 or less. Like if they're not pairing it with like Sapphire Coil and stuff, which obviously Ruby Amethyst is not doing. So hopefully that makes sense. We also have a Robin Hood shift package coming back into the meta, which again I think is a little bit of a liability, just because the odds that this Robin Hood survives can be pretty low. You know, people will hardcast songs like steel songs to out this if they foresee the shift line coming. But again, Robin Hood, we talked about this before, right? Just like with Calhoun, which again is a 4 of in this deck. These are the cards that once they drop as an aggro player, I'm like, how do I turn my stuff sideways now? Like I have to play through the Robin Hood, I have to play through the Calhoun. So, you know, these cards still might be fairly cheap on the market. And if you're looking at, you know, some early results, if we are entering an aggro oriented meta, a mid-range oriented meta, those cards become significantly better, right? Versus when we're in a control oriented meta. Speaking of control, we do have a discard making top 4. Unfortunately, they couldn't win it, but as expected, the almighty feared Diablo making its appearance. Again, less consistent in this list. To supplement not playing, you know, like 11 or 12 Diablos like Emerald Amethyst plays, you are playing some Morphs, which obviously are usable with Beast Tragic Hero, Diablos, and the Pete's. Only 3 of, and then 2 Tinkerbell. So interesting to see Tinkerbell kind of being the default go-to steel card that a lot of people are opting to play at least early on here. Definitely don't see as much Tinkerbell online. So interesting to see that this tournament had a lot of Tinkerbell representation. I guess the aggro list didn't play it, right? If I double check. Yeah, no Tinkerbell here. Capping out at 5. But as a discard list, I guess it is pretty standard. Again, like we're like, when was the last time you saw Rise of the Titans be played? Like literally set 5, right? Didn't this card come out in set 5? Set 3, Jesus. Okay. Yeah, so it's been a long time since you saw Rise of the Titans come out. Like, why are we playing cards like that? We're just regressing back in the meta. I mean, I'm not saying the player, made a mistake by including it. Obviously, you're including it because you fear things like McDuck Manors, mines, apparently, any other like libraries. I guess items aren't really a thing anymore, but you're basically playing it for location, so it's kind of crazy. We got another. Is this basically the same list? Maybe they were teammates or something. So yeah, another Amethyst Steel making the top 4. Ooh, and we got Amethyst Steel Library. So this one is a little bit more akin to my list, but again, on the docks with the libraries and on the White Roses. So a lot more aggressive in terms of its lore gain. Mr. Smee, Madam, wow, very low to the ground. So this is like really aggro oriented. But you can see why like the Tinkerbell mid-range list could clap this list up, right? Because Tinkerbell comes down and you're like, okay, now it's hard for me to turn anything sideways because I get like 2 for 1 on every interaction with the Tinkerbell. Only Genie plays around it. And the opposing Emeralds, not geez, the opposing Amethyst Steel list that we're playing Tinkerbell are also playing Genies plus strengths. So it's like they have answers to Genies. The Cobra is still a pretty strong interaction because if they waste a strength on the Cobra, you're probably fine with that. Your Cobra comes down and hopefully gives you the +2 lore. I'm surprised that Ruby Amethyst didn't do better or there was more representation here. I don't think Flynn Rider is the way, but interesting to see it coming back in this list. This is pretty, again, this is just like you're just going back in your metagame, right? To like this is like again, set 5 Ruby Amethyst. Only 2 Crab, but also with 2 Peter Pan Shadow, so good tech against the Diablo. 2 Genies and 4 Rabbits. Okay, 4 Goats. Makes sense with 4 Rabbits if you're running snakes, but no foxes, interestingly enough. 3 Elsa, 3 Maui, 2 Medusa, and 4 Big Sisu. Which is crazy, especially since you're not running 3-drop Sisu for the shift. 4 Big Sisu, 4 Be Prepareds. No strength reduction cards, by the way, right? You're an Amethyst, you're not in Sapphire. 4 Brawls, 4 Friends, 2 Libraries. Opting to not play the 1-drop Diablo, which is fair for Ruby Amethyst. Very interesting take on a list, though. I'm just trying to process it a little bit more, but Chernabog making top 8 again makes sense that this deck gets a lot, like it gets checked a lot harder in the metagame now, because the whole point of this deck was I want to outrace the slower control decks. But if you're into a mid-range meta, I think this deck just loses. It's like rock paper scissors, right? Like I think this deck struggles a lot more into mid-range because once, like for example, that Amethyst Steel Tinkerbell list, once they drop the Tinkerbell on you, you're in a situation of okay, like I'm gonna wait, build up my board, so I can get the Tramp Chernabog interaction going. But in the meantime, you're playing against Amethyst. They're gonna Elsa tap down your stuff, strength away some other stuff. This list in particular, yeah, is playing the Deceiver, which only hits the strength in the Amethyst Steel matchup. It's still a relatively resilient list. Like the Chernabog, it's weird because it's arguably stronger because of you don't have to worry about big Sisu, right? But if it can outrace the Ruby Sapphire decks from prior to the Hiram ban, it was still doing its job anyways. Post Hiram ban, you could argue that it still does its thing. Like again, it can just keep its stuff readied up, not having to fear be prepared unless Ruby Amethyst comes back into the meta. You have Ursula Deceiver to potentially check it, but yeah, I just think into the mid-range list, this list suffers a little bit more because they're gonna turbo out that Tinkerbell, right? And especially after game 1 when they know what you're playing, if you don't get a lot of the lore early on, even if you do get, let me just play a bunch of stuff, keep them readied up until I get the Tramp Chernabog interaction going, like you still won't have enough on board. And once you start turning your stuff sideways, you got to remember they're developing their board too, right? So you're just probably going to get blown out. Then you have the issue of, if I'm not turning my stuff sideways, getting damage on it, how do I proc my Rapunzel? Because it's like a back and forth, right? If you're like, I'm just gonna play stuff, keep them ready. Your opponent's like, okay, I'm gonna play stuff and I'm gonna quest, and you're like, okay, great, you've quested, so I can turn some of my stuff sideways now to throw it into your characters to take the damage to get the Rapunzel draw. But then on the clap back, I now have my stuff turned sideways, so you can clap back with Tinkerbell. It's like, it's a weird back and forth interaction. If I'm just trying to look at it from like this tournament's perspective. I'm surprised no Amber Steel song here, but maybe there's not, a lot of well-versed Steel song players in this area who want to play that deck. The Mufasa and the squad, the Calhoun and the Helga, an even split there. I talked about this again in my Amethyst Steel video, or my Amethyst video where I review the Amethyst Steel pairing. 3 docks. Yeah, a lot of steel, a lot of dock coming up. Of course, like I keep mentioning, the Force Me, 3 Piglet, 3 of the 2 questing dock from Amber. Okay, 2 John Silver, 4 Lawrence, 4 Pete, 4 Rapunzel. I'm a big fan of the Bagheera. I love to see it. 2 Beast Tragic Hero. I think you might want to go more Tragic Heroes. 4 Mufasa, 3 Tinkerbell. Look at Tinkerbell, man, just coming back into the metagame here. 3 Storm and 4 Strength. Uninkable count 14. Okay. I like it. I like the Mufasa list. I think Mufasa is back as well. I just really wish that Amber Ruby would have got that dual ink draw character. Come into play, deal damage, draw cards or something like that. Like, perfect opportunity to do that, Ravensburger. You dropped the ball on that one. But otherwise, I like it. I really do like this Bagheera. I think this card, especially in a mid-range and aggro meta, I think this card, like, I'm surprised. Like, I haven't checked the price of it, but, like, I bought, like, after the Heron ban, I did buy this because I'm like, it's pretty much at one of the lowest points it's probably going to be at. But yeah, that's a quick review of that tournament. I'm not sure how long we are on this video. I do want to take a look at the Europeans, Hiram's Fall. This one we do see a little bit more emeralds. Top 8 and first place. Okay, so this is basically a take on the existing Emerald Amethyst list that has been kind of propping up quite a bit online. Obviously, some tech options in here. We got 1 Lyle, 2 Bell, 2 Sir Hiss. Only 2 of the 2 Drop Diablo, the new one. Only 2 Genie, opting for 2 Rabbits as well. No Snakes, but still 4 Foxes, 4 Crabs, 4 Elsa, and then the discard package. So yeah, interesting tech. No Peter Pan needed in that one. Ruby Amethyst coming in second place. I wonder if they played they probably did, right? They played the Emerald Amethyst player. And looking at this list, there's no surprise that they would lose to Emerald. The Tremaine and the Medusa are strong, but into the Emerald decks, they're going to probably discard your hand, but like way before you get to 6 ink anyways. The Finders Keepers, the Friends, the Rabbit, the Genie, all these cards, and these, well, in this case 10 1-drop redraws and the 4 libraries. Fantastic cards, but if your opponent has an opposing Diablo, like, your draw engine becomes their draw engine, right? I've said this before. You have Brawls, be prepared to deal with it, and that's about it. And Genies, I guess, right? 2 Genies, but a much less robust package to deal with the Diablo. But that's fair. Like, maybe you didn't need to tech your Ruby Amethyst list for a lot of Diablo, right? There was only 2 in this top 8 apparently. We don't have the full results yet, but this one, opting for the improvises with the Lucifers. Okay, so much more aggressive on the discard, but only 2 Prince John, which is awkward. No Peter Pan tech in this list here. And Popsicles, I don't know why it's called Popsicles, because it's probably Manor Shark, right? Yep, 1 Scar, 4 Shark, 4 Popsicle, 4 Manor. This is basically the Dinka Fam Ruby Sapphire list, which is basically how Ruby Sapphire survives moving forward. And you got another Tinkerbell list here in 8th. So this the Tinkerbell mid-range the Tinkerbell mid-range Amethyst Steel list seems to be the way things are going. But interesting results. Only 4 matches again, 18 players, but it's good to see how some local scenes are adapting. I'm sure. Oh, Australia. Okay. Only 1 list though, and it is Emerald Amethyst. I'm sure after another week we'll see some real big adaptations. We'll see some big tournaments, some big names, see what they're playing. But yeah, this is just an interesting look here. This is only like preliminary results, so I wouldn't even consider this tournament yet until we get more updates. 4 Sisu, 4 Madame Medusa. That's absolutely insane. 4 Dragonfire, 4 people. What is happening? 24 on Inkables, 76 card Ruby Amethyst deck. Bro, what is happening? Mario, what? Is this real? Nah, dude. He's just like, I'm drawing a ton of cards anyways. I don't even care. But bro, like, you're reducing the chances you're seeing good cards on curve so much. That's wild. If this list actually worked, I'd be interesting to follow up on this later. Anyways, guys, that's just a quick look at the opening weekend for the post-Hero ban. If you made it this far in the video, thank you again for watching. Let me know what you think. Oh, this is interesting. Banned. Oh. Anyways, let's wrap it up there. Thanks for watching. Quantum is out.